I got expenses, Keith. I got expenses.
Yeah, headphones are one of those expensive. Get them. It just makes editing so much easier.
I know.
You hate having things done easily.
I know. You got to earn it, Keith. All these people trying to be famous on YouTube. Back in my day, you couldn't just make a movie and put it on YouTube. You had to suffer for your art for years to die a failure. And that's the right... Bring those days back. I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about this episode. This was just sort of a random kind of last-minute decision on our part to this documentary came out, this 2-part documentary on HBO entitled Tiger, and it was a very interesting watch for me, but I'm just excited to talk about it because finally I feel like we might actually be experts about what we talk about.
For
once. That's not even a joke.
That's not a joke. We have some authority.
Yeah. We don't know anything about anything, generally speaking. But documentary work, specifically sports documentary work, is sort of both in our wheelhouses. Mm-hmm. This is what we do. We've worked together on countless productions for several major sports organizations.
There you go.
I don't say that to boast. I just say that to say we're clearly better than whoever made Tiger.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
Obviously. Brought to you by HBOMax.
Yeah.
Bring that joke back.
I really liked Tiger for the most part. So I kid and I jest. But I was excited. I feel like anytime this is not, we are not sponsored by anyone,
no.
Much less HBOMax.
Yet.
So you'll know that I'm being genuine.
Yet. Caveat.
You'll know that I'm being genuine when I say I generally am excited when new stuff comes out on HBO. I found that the quality is consistently amongst the highest, if not the highest.
Yeah.
So whether it's a sports documentary or an original series or whatever it might be. So when this came out a couple weeks ago, or when I first learned about it, I saw a trailer, I think, a couple weeks prior. I was excited and knew that it would be quality stuff. You?
I don't think the quality is arguable. HBO Sports, Hard Knocks is fantastic.
Do we understand what the I want to see tomorrow? Let's go to eat a damn snack.
That's kind of what 24/7 I think was an HBO production as well. I think they're known for really great sports stuff. So I was never as surprised about the quality. And we could debate the merits of the film, but really the thing that jumped out at me is all this film made me want to do is talk about parenting and society. It just makes me want to have conversation around the subject matter and less about the nuts and bolts of the documentary, because I think overall it was very good. But there's definitely things I joke a little bit. We could definitely talk about things about the documentary. I could definitely nitpick some things if I wanted to. But generally I think it's worth the watch. It's a good watch from an entertainment standpoint. From a good filmmaking documentary standpoint, I think it holds up. But it just makes me want to talk about social issues more than anything.
Yeah, Earl made a lot of interesting choices, I would say.
Yeah. That's
an intense man.
I want to get into parenting and how we shape our children based on our own personal biases.
I'll say I did learn a lot. I agree it wasn't just entertaining from a watchability standpoint, but I did learn a lot about Tiger, who's a character who in all of our lives for such a long time that I'm not a huge golf guy, so I don't watch a lot of golf at all. But Tiger always transcended the sport.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's such a star, and so even though I don't follow golf and I'm not as aware of all the importance of all the records and all that sort of thing, I have a general knowledge just from being a lot throughout that time, a teenage and in my 20s. Young man who loves sports, so you pick up a lot of the stuff along the way, and you know that Tiger has been responsible for a ton of hugely important sporting moments in the last couple decades.
Oh my goodness!
Absolutely, he's an icon. Him and Jordan, I think, are the top two icons in sports. Really, those are the top. When I think of sports, that's...
And Serena. You gotta get Serena.
Absolutely. You're right. That's 100%. That was the top 3. I'll jump in with this on a technical side, on the more of a, we're making this documentary, you're making this documentary. I feel like it's a question I always ask in film in general, is the things, and it keeps coming up, the things that you need. The thing that jumps out at me is that it's 2 parts. My question is, does it need to be 2 parts? Or is HBOMax or the director of the film, the people, the powers behind this film, trying to just maximize this? Because, you know, the Bulls documentary comes out as 10 parts, Tiger King comes out at 6 parts, the OJ series that came out, that was, I want to say, 6 parts. Like it feels
5, yeah.
5 parts. It feels like we're going down this road of really belaboring and pulling apart, which in general I'm not like inherently opposed to. Like I want to get into nitty gritty stuff. I want to really, I don't want a surface level documentary, especially when you get to icon status of some of these people I've just named, minus Joe Exotic. But like these things are like, now he is.
That's how we take care of ISIS right there, buddy.
So I'm not inherently against it, but I can't help but ask the question, does this need to be 2 parts? Or is that a clear cash grab, attention hold, reason for people to subscribe to HBO Max type event?
It's impossible to say without being in the room, but I think that's interesting you bring that up because I had the same thought going in. I was like, oh, it's only 2 parts. Because nowadays, like you mentioned, so many documentaries are now documentary series. For better and worse. Like you mentioned the OJ Made in America. I think that's probably the best work of documentary filmmaking I've maybe ever seen. That was just a remarkable series. So it can work stretched out, but I often feel like that a lot of these productions start to feel kind of thin as it goes on. There's a documentary series on HBO about the Nexium cult that recently was out that you know, we watch a ton of true crime and cult stuff and all that jazz.
You're in a cult. It's just say it. Just open up about it.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out how I can start my own, really. But like that one, by the episode 3 or 4, it was like, okay, we didn't learn anything new in this episode. Now you start to feel like it's often strung out for that purpose. Let's make this last as long as possible. I even felt that way a little bit about some of the Last Dance stuff, where I was like, we're not, like, I wanted more detail in some of those episodes. Like, I want to go in deeper. If you're going to give it a whole episode, let's get in deeper. But with this one, I was excited when I saw it was 2 parts, because I thought that means they really nailed it. Like, that was my thought, was like, they really condensed this, and it's going to be really thorough, but concise. Like, it's just, I really had high hopes in that regard, because they're not stretching it out to be this long thing. But then I felt like I kind of wanted more. So it was kind of funny. It goes the other way. I was like, this should have been 3 or 4 parts. I would have said.
See, I disagree with that. The first, I don't feel like I needed the first part. What I care about, and probably what most people care about, is the salacious, sort of gossipy end of his career. That's really, I think, what most people care about. And I want to get the most insight into his fall, not his rise. I don't think they did a really exceptional job at pulling me into his rise. They stated it. It happened. I'm well aware of it. Everyone, I would say, for the most part, anyone who knows Tiger Woods knows how great he is of a golfer. And they just kind of showed me that. I think this documentary, you could have gotten through his success in a different way, maybe even a more creative way, because I don't think this documentary is extremely creative. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You could have showed his meteoric success a little bit more differently, quickly. We could have gotten through that and just take bits and pieces. Like, this could have been a 2-hour, one documentary, 2-hour thing. Because I know about how successful he is. I know that he was the Michael Jordan to Nike after Michael Jordan left. Like, I know that. I know he wins 14 championships, 15, tour championships. Like, I know that stuff.
Most people don't.
Maybe. But I learned stuff on the back end. I learned stuff on his fall. I learned stuff on his relationships, or multiple relationships, his wife. Like, I learned more. I learned stuff.
Yeah,
and
not everybody knew that stuff, though, too. Like, I almost knew more about that. Like, what did we really learn? It was like, oh, he had sex with a lot of women. He was incredibly unfaithful. like we knew all that. Like there wasn't that much detail in that second part that I learned. I felt like in the first part, I learned a lot of the specifics, and I think it's really necessary, especially for people who don't follow sports super closely or are, particularly golf, to really recognize, to really like view and bear witness to his like meteoric rise, his success. Like that was super important. That to me was the best part. I think that your whole point is interesting because I feel almost exactly the opposite. I feel like the first one is almost perfect. Like the first part is really, really good. And I was emotionally invested in watching him, his development as a young person, and his dad being weird. And I think you have to draw the viewer in to feel like, because a lot of people, like I watched it with my girlfriend, and my girlfriend started it by saying like, I hate Tiger Woods because of his misdeeds.
Yeah.
Tiger Woods is a piece of shit. I don't like that guy. But she doesn't know anything about, like, I mean, she knows he's a star and is a famous sports, was very successful, but didn't know about a lot of those specifics. And like over the course of that journey, like she doesn't care about golf, and just watching some of those shots, both of us are like, oh my God.
Oh, he was amazing.
Like this guy was like on another level of another level. And I get like emotional just watching like greatness. Like that's kind of corny, but every time he sinks one of those putts from 30 yards away, like I almost tear up because I'm just like, this guy really was like, like it's hugely important to build that up so that when he becomes this heel, when it makes that turn, it hits harder because you're like, this guy was everything.
As we're talking it through, because we're doing this in real time. I watched it literally 5 hours ago. So we're doing this in real time. As you talk about it, I agree with that. Of course you have to build him up. Of course you have to show his greatness. It can't just be, oh, and he's a prick. We don't start there. I really like the stuff about his dad, and that was his growing up was really interesting. I guess really as I think about it, the part that I'm upset about is how straightforward his success appeared to me in through the eyes of a documentary. Maybe that's more what because I didn't think it was inherently deep, and I didn't think it was inherently creative. It was
like
just
you
more
mean just in the structure of the film.
Yeah, the structure of the film, and maybe that's more where it felt like, oh, I can just do without this, because I could Google him and find the same information. Like I could go to YouTube right now and Google highlights of Tiger Woods and see all those same things. It wasn't presented to me in a way that was particularly creative. It didn't inform me in a way where I was learning new stuff. And maybe that's more my beef with it as I talk it out with you.
Yeah, maybe. I think this is trying to be sort of the go-to definitive Tiger story up to this point.
Yeah.
So I guess playing devil's advocate for the filmmakers, I would be like, we have to tell the story in a way that's going to appeal to the broadest audience, where there's going to be, it is a little linear.
Yeah, well, that's my least favorite sentence you could say. Well, we got to get it to everybody. It's got to appeal to every mass audience possible. Like, now tell a great story, and whoever likes it. But I agree that this was trying to be the definitive documentary. But how definitive of a documentary can you be if the subject of that documentary is not participating, nor his wife? Didn't seem like a lot of the close. His father's not in it. Obviously, he's passed away now. But really the main cast of characters, so his mother's not in it, his father's not in it, he's not in it, his wife's not in it. None of the true core participants. His caddy is the most credible person in the film.
Yeah.
That you would give credit to. So my question to you is, how do you feel about that? How serious do you take this film to be factual and accurate? Because I'll tell you, there was a part of me that just feels like, oh, we're going to do a documentary about Tiger Woods and we're going to get people to talk about him? Sure. Like, you can get 1 billion people who's had a chance run in, who's had, to say whatever you want them to say. So the credibility of the film, just in the back of my mind, I'm not trying to take anything away from the film. Again, I do think it is good, but it's in the back of my mind of, do you want to be on an HBO documentary about Tiger Woods? Here's the narrative we want to push. Like, you've got a lot of leniency there if the authorities in this matter are not on camera, are not part of this documentary in any way.
Yeah, but that goes both ways. And that's one of the interesting things about documentaries, and I think one of the challenging things is if, you can say those things, and the points you're making, I think, are valid. But if Tiger was in it, and if his wife was in it, you would know immediately that Tiger has more say in what's happening. Tiger wouldn't be in something that would paint him too negatively. So then if Tiger was in it, I would be kind of suspicious about like, oh, is he an executive producer? Is he pulling the strings behind the scenes to sort of rewrite his own history, which I think happens in a ton of documentaries
Of course.
now. People try to control their own narratives.
Yes.
And,
no more than Tiger.
Yeah. So
as you
that
learn.
I think it works both ways. So that's the nature of the beast.
But I think there's a difference between the involvement in the film and getting an interview from someone. You can get an interview.
Well, there certainly is, but you would know if you got an interview with Tiger, that would be a very conditional interview. There's no world where Tiger Woods says, yeah, I'll do this interview for this documentary. I trust you guys to tell an accurate, honest story. Like, that would never happen.
You're right. I'm going to play devil's advocate that now I'm just speaking from a personal point of pain in my quest to make sports documentaries with certain figures, is you have control over the words you say. Like you can agree to do an interview and then not address the things you don't want to address. Like if
Yeah, but you also know as well as anybody that if you're Tiger Woods and you agree to be a part of something, you are lending your credibility to that production, implicitly or not. And editing is a powerful tool.
Absolutely,
and
of course.
You can say whatever you want, but people can use things in different contexts and chop things as they need. So you're not going to do that. You're Tiger Woods. Why would you do that?
I don't think editors ever mislead people. I've never seen editors use something out of context.
Hot, sexy, amazing. Oh my god.
Sexy, slow, and slithery.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about this part with you because I was talking to my wife about it. I paused it. I had to pause it during the second time. And to hear all the women come forward and talk about how it wasn't just sex. We had a relationship, and no more than the main woman that they present. I already forget her name. Yeah,
Rachel
Yucatel. As they present her as the woman, because that's the woman they got to interview. They present her as the mistress of Tiger Woods, and how many? I want to say there was at least 3 times I could point to in the documentary where she says this was as close to him saying "I love you" as he could. There was so many times where she assumed the feeling behind something he did.
Here he was in my bed, and he was my Tiger.
And that's what makes me just want to hear more from him and hear more sides of this story than just the people who have felt abandoned and wronged and hurt by Tiger Woods. Because you can get that collective of people to spin a narrative you want. But of course that's what they're going to say. The point I wanted to discuss with you is how crazy it is in relationships or just in anything where one reality happens but there are 2 complete different perspectives. Because I'm just thinking, like, if you ask Tiger Woods that same thing when he flew out that woman and her side of the story is he can't play golf without me. He can't play without me. He needs me and only me to be there so he can perform at the level that. And you ask Tiger Woods that same conversation, and he says, "Oh yeah, I just wanted to bang that chick, and
I just want to get laid.
I just want to get laid, and I enjoy having sex with her, and like it'd be fun to have her out there because it makes me feel alive or whatever. Like I don't know, and like I don't think twice about her when I'm playing golf or with my wife and family or whatever. It's like she's irrelevant to me. Like I'm so fascinated by that. I'm fascinated by that, and I would have loved to hear multiple sides to that story, not just one side of that story, repeatedly.
Yeah.
I understand. It's not the fault of the documentary. I want to be clear about that. I don't think it's the fault. As a viewer, that's just what I'm left with.
I thought all of that was sort of transitioning just more into the bigger picture of once we get to the dark side of things. Like I said, I really liked the first part of the documentary. I thought it set everything up really nicely, and I was really invested and excited for the second part. The second part, I thought really, like, it obviously goes into the dark side, and it gets into a lot of specifics, but I didn't feel, like I mentioned, like I learned that much. Like, I knew that Tiger was a philanderer epic proportions. That he was like, that was the whole thing. He had all these mistresses. He was running off to Vegas to do all this stuff all the time. It's like you pick up a couple of details, but I just felt like a lot of that started to feel like it was going really fast through that stuff, and there wasn't a lot of new information. They set up that Rachel Yucatel person as like she's the greatest catch of all. Like at the end of the first one, the fucking badass guitar riff as she's walking in, like, I'm ready. What do you guys want to talk about? The end of I was like, oh, she's gonna have some shit to say. She didn't have anything to say. Like there was nothing interesting or new. It sounds like, I mean, I don't mean to be dismissive, but she sounds like a mistress. Like she sounds like exactly what any mistress of a high profile person would be saying. It's like, he loved me. We had this relationship. He was sneaking around. We flew to these secret places. That's the extent of her insight. Yeah. So, but even in the second episode, at the beginning, they do that same like thing again. That same gimmick where it's like guitar riff. We got her, and I'm just like, oh,
because
shit,
that was the biggest get of that, and that's what comes back to, like, that's the biggest get of that documentary.
Yeah.
And that's what I think hurts it a little bit. It doesn't seem like the definitive documentary because they didn't get anyone to really be that makes it feel like I'm getting the full story.
Yeah.
You know,
you don't get anything new. Like that's sort of your general point, right? Yeah. And I agree with that overall. Is like I like the first part. I'll keep saying that. I liked seeing all the golf success and learning a little bit more about his relationship with his father, and learning that Earl was I mean, rest in peace, a little bit overly prodding, for that young boy.
Yeah,
you can see
Tiger
how
didn't have a chance.
Was like a robot. Yeah, that guy's got it's challenges. Like I really felt I learned a lot from that. It's like that poor kid, like you said, never had a chance. But never had. He's like one of the greatest athletes of all time. That guy never had a chance.
He was always going to be the
greatest.
As
an aside, I do think it's always fascinating that the best athletes of all time always have a psychotic parent that drives them to be that way.
Yeah.
So that is the trade-off.
But that's what it is. Like this is what it made me, the documentary wanted me to talk about more than anything, is that it just feels like it's Tiger's quest to find love and affection by being the greatest. Yeah. Like that's the only way he knows since he was a child. His dad programmed him, and his mom's there too. Like the whole family is probably programming him. And I don't mean disrespect to them as people. Like it's hard to raise kids. But that's what it felt like to me from the cheap seats. It just says your son's just constantly chasing approval, and he only knows how to get love through his success. You do good at golf, I will love you. So I have to be the best.
The family dynamic was so weird from top to bottom. And the old interview that they have of the two parents sitting side by side, like the two shot, the mom's eyes, like she does not even look comfortable sitting next to Earl. Like she's like kind of like what's he gonna say? Like looking at him side eye. Like the whole time I was like, this is a really weird energy happening in this house, regardless.
Yeah. Well, you don't know where they are in their relationship at that, at that point in time.
And he's off in the trailer at the golf course, like whatever. But yeah, the thing where I would say that it really, where I felt like it moved too fast for me was sort of once it introduced the dark side. And I'm like, okay, I wish I was getting more information here that I couldn't have just imagined, because it's all very like some of the weird specifics about like role play and 15 girls at once and all this stuff is like, okay, I guess I didn't know all these things, but I almost don't really need to, because it's not even like in service of the story, it's not providing any new stuff that's like really vital. But the part that really like glossed over was his return. I felt like the end of the film kind of fell flat in a lot of ways when he wins that Masters or whatever in 2019, I think, and he has his son, and it brings it full circle with the father and son, which I liked. I liked that aspect of things, but because it flew over his like shitty golf years, like that's what when I think about Tiger Woods, that's what I think about. I think about, he had that rough time, Thanksgiving, his wife broke the car with the golf clubs. I remember that, and then he was awful for like 8 years.
For a long time,
And that part was just like, showed him kind of be bad for a match or two, and then jumps ahead to 2019. Yeah. And so because of of just skipping over that, I felt like it fell more flat, because that was the narrative forever. We heard a little bit from Stephen A. and a couple other people like Tiger's done, but it was like that. It was that for years.
Right.
Like we needed to feel that a little more to make the ending land harder.
I don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say.
I wish there was more at the end. I find myself wanting that a lot more in some documentaries now. I feel like it's more and more of a thing where it just kind of ends, because you could tell they really wanted to wrap it up on that note of like father-son, full circle, boom, nailed it.
Yep.
And I want more information, like even if it's text, like postscript. I want just like, this is what's happening now. I thought it was weird that it never mentions Tiger's really future relationships. We don't he dated Lindsey Vonn for a year or two. Like I thought there'd be more like wrapping it up. Where's Elin now? Where's some of these other characters?
Yeah.
What's Steve the Caddy's relationship with Tiger now? Like all that stuff I just wanted a little more wrap up, but it wanted to do the tight tight circle.
I kind of agree with you. It doesn't, I don't think it doesn't, it goes a little bit in certain regards under the surface, but it doesn't explore the things that I really care about. Like what I care about is probably the wrong way to phrase it. Like as a human being, he can do whatever he wants, and his personal life should be his personal life. But if you're gonna tell me this story, you gotta tell me that you gotta fill in the gaps of the things that I don't know. Like that's what I like about documentaries. It's a package of all the things that I don't know, and I do feel like a lot of it is Google worthy, is YouTube worthy, for me to sort of figure that stuff out on my own. And if I can do that, if I can Google and YouTube my way to your film, then I don't think your documentary is doing a good enough job. And I think there are bits and pieces that the film doesn't do a good job, but I don't think it's strung it enough together in the parts that matter. And I think what you're saying is correct. Like I want to know more about his other relationships, his life past how does he pull himself out of, the wife's, Ela, I forget her. Elin. I want to know more about how she handled it. There's just so much, this documentary left me with a lot more questions than it did answers from a story.
That's fair. I think it's a fair criticism to say that the documentary is just sort of like reading the Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
Is you're getting the things that are already publicly known. Just listed chronologically in a not particularly stylized way, and it's just the information. So it's entertaining.
Yeah, it's well done. I don't think it's poorly done. It's a well done documentary, but a well done Wikipedia page.
Okay. I think that's totally fair. It's trash.
Yeah, we should have done it. You're right. We should have done it.
Obviously.
Yeah. It's very eerie to hear Earl talk about his son in college, that he's going to be Jesus or Gandhi or whatever. Like he's going to change the world.
My heart fills with so much joy when I realize that he will transcend this game.
I can't imagine growing up. That's what it took me
pressure.
To bad places, like as a child, as my own child, like as being a kid growing up with what I thought were pressures from my parents to be certain things and to live up to certain expectations. I can't imagine what it would be like to grow up in a house knowing that, you have to solve racial injustice. Like,
you're going to be the cure for racism in the world.
That's what you're going to do. You're not just going to be a golfer. Your golf is going to lead to change within social justice. Like, I can't imagine that pressure and what that feels like.
No, and you can see with young Tiger, just like behind his eyes, like he's just like it's too much. Like that poor boy never had a chance to just like live life, and but that's the price. That can be the price of like true greatness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Tiger could have just been a really good golfer, but to be the greatest golfer of all time and like be on the Mount Rushmore of sports for the last 30 or 40 years, like that takes sacrifice. Like that takes that level of like, no, my parents insisted I break up with my high school girlfriend. Like that sort of like unhealthy psychological life leads to is what's required. Like that's the trade-off. And I think that's a really fascinating
that letter was
thing.
Super interesting. I liked that. That's true detail that I would never know about his parents clearly writing that letter or forcing him to write that letter to break up with their girlfriend because they're afraid you're going to get her pregnant.
Yeah.
Like that's a real insight to that to him as a to his character, the shape of his character of a human being. It's not that part was kind of nuts.
I didn't know that much about the Navy SEAL stuff too, so I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that like that was part of the driving reasons of his injuries. I had no idea about that, so that was interesting.
Yeah. Would you accept that level of fame if I could give it to you?
Not anymore. Not anymore. When I was younger, I would have absolutely. I wanted to be famous more than I wanted to be anything from the time I was 10 to the time I was 25.
This morning.
No. I don't know. I think as a general statement, I think as you get older, that becomes less and less appealing, especially in this time that we currently live in.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine. I just can't imagine. I felt really bad. I mean, not just for Tiger, but for the ladies, for the scandalous ones. Because it's like the kind of stuff that those paparazzi are like shouting at them, and like that kind of shit. Like that makes me sick.
Yeah.
Like if you're that kind of person, like you're a piece of shit. Like if your job is to be a paparazzi where you're yelling like, oh, how does it feel to be like a whore? How does it feel? Like, what's Tiger's favorite sex position? Are you STDs, girl? You better be wearing a condom. Do you like it raw? Like all that shit.
That was
like,
brutal.
You shouldn't be able to sleep at night.
Yeah.
Like that makes me so sad. And you could tell while she is, she certainly seems flawed. And I feel so bad for anyone that feels the need to do that sort of thing to their face, because I mean honestly, like it's just sad. It makes me genuinely sad. I'm not trying to be super judgmental, but that's so excessive. So I feel like we'll never know like what it's like to be in her position, even though she did do a bad thing also. I thought the film did a good job as a whole of making almost all the characters a certain degree of sympathetic.
Yeah.
Even the ones that were doing bad things. I mean, most especially Tiger. Like you get a pretty well-rounded image, and someone like Rachel Yucatel, like I'm trying to word this right. I think it's easy to see her and be like, I'm gonna make fun of her because she's the mistress and she's had a bunch of plastic surgery done, and that's sort of like our reaction as society sometimes to be like, oh my God, look at this girl. But then like I really started imagining, I was just like, that's fair, but it's also like, this is just sad. Like I feel bad for her too.
Yeah.
That she got drawn into this. People make mistakes. People fuck up. And to have your whole life like
destroyed,
completely. Yeah, that's not cool.
That's why I would never want that level of fame, or really any level of fame. I want to be recognized.
Just enough.
I want to be recognized for what I do. You know, like I want the craft that I choose, filmmaking or whatever, art, creativity, whatever. Whatever I put forward, I want to be judged on the work. 'Cause we're all flawed. Like every person is going to make mistakes. So, and the way people handle it today, it's this piranha-like mentality. You know, it's one thing to try and understand what's going on because you're interested in public figures, and yes, that does come with the territory. So if people are interested in you, they're interested in all of you. And so I get that to some extent, but how people choose to handle it, like to shout at his wife and kids, Tiger's wife, ex-wife and kids, and like as they're on a walk or whatever, like that.
Yeah.
To say like, yeah, I like it raw, to quote a Wu-Tang song at this, like we have to be better than that as a society and handling that process. Like I get it, we all are interested in what happened with Tiger, as I am too. I'm not above that, but there's a way to go about it. There's a tact that we can have, right? Or 10 years later,
decorum.
10, 15, 20 years later, to be able to get that story and be like, oh, that's really what happened from a distance, seems much different than running up to a woman who just had her life destroyed in the middle of a street in front of her kids and just talk about sex positions. Like, completely different. And that it does.
Well, that's what gets clicks. That's what gets clicks.
It's brutal.
That's the driving currency.
There's no reason for it. There's just no reason for it.
No. Everyone just needs to be better.